of this webinar. Our first ever webinar from EduRise team. So we are super excited to have you on board with us. It is really wonderful. Welcoming you in our traditional style. Namaste. Namaste to Kristin. Namaste to all the participants who joined with us today. A quick introduction. I'm not going to take much time. I want to quickly introduce our speaker to you for the day, for you to actually get to know, very interesting stuff from her, right? Kristin Bedell, our speaker today, is an experienced, creative, and dedicated educator with proven skill sets in leadership, collaboration, curriculum development, program development, grant writing, professional development, and community outreach. She was twice named as a North Carolina finalist for the Presidential Award in Excellence in Math and Science, and received the IEEE Educational Activities Board Pre-Educator Award for 2014. She received her bachelor's degree in theatre and speech from the College of William and Mary and her bachelor's degree in elementary education from North Carolina Central University. She has lived in Efland, North Carolina since 2004, working as a teacher in kindergarten through 8th grade during that decade. He has demonstrated commitments to increasing diversity within different education and access to high quality education. He especially emphasizes science and education for undeserved learners. It is so wonderful that to have such a very interesting speaker with us on board today. So my mic is not okay. My mic is not working. Just give me a minute. Is my audio clear now? Like everyone who's hearing, is my audio clear now? Hello everyone, can you hear me now? Yeah, okay. I'm so sorry for I'm so sorry. So I was actually introducing our speaker today, and which you can actually see on the screen. I'll quickly share about the purpose of the webinar, right? So the purpose of the webinar is actually trifold. We wanted to bring in 3 elements from this webinar. One is the understanding of global education, like bringing educators around the globe. The second idea is to actually get some really valuable insights from them and tips around how we can use those tips for the virtual education in our own context. The third is to also ask a lot of very interesting questions. This is going to be a very interactive webinar, and I'm sure Kristin will ask a lot of questions and some time to actually address your questions. This is primarily the 3 things that we wanted to do in this webinar, and I'm going to hand over the stage to the speaker now, and I'm going to actually welcome you all again. Thank you so much for joining today, and yeah, over to Kristin. I'm going to pause my screen. Over to you. You can actually share your screen.
Thank you so much. I still don't have screen sharing though. Can you? It says you need to make me the organizer, or make me the presenter. Sorry. So while we're waiting, just wanted to say welcome. I am very grateful to be here. I still can't share my screen. Worst comes to worst, it's a Google slideshow, so I can send you guys the link and we can all work together on it. In fact, let me go ahead and do that right now, just in case we lose connectivity.
Yeah,
oh, there it is. Yay! Okay. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. My name is Kristin Bedell. I live in North Carolina in the United States of America. I live in Central North Carolina. I have 2 dogs, so if you hear them barking, I apologize. I share a house with 2 dogs, 3 kids, and my husband. And today I've been asked to speak with you guys about virtual learning. So a little bit about me. I am a doctoral candidate at the University of North Carolina in the School of Education. I know a lot about how people learn, particularly about how young people learn, and even more particularly about how they learn science. I know a lot about curriculum design, multimedia technology, coaching teachers, and how to make figure skating costumes, because 2 of my 3 kids are figure skaters. I know a little bit about how to code, how to solder, and how to sew electronics onto figure skating costumes. I noticed from the list that was sent to me, the registration list, that most of you are engineering professors. And so today what I'm going to ask you to do is think about how some of the big ideas that we talk about can apply to your discipline, because I'm not going to be talking about engineering specifically. So my goals for today, one is to recognize basic principles of the learning sciences. So this is what I do in my studies. I'm a learning scientist. I explore how people learn. I want us to think about how we can use technology for empowerment. We have 3 case studies we're going to look at today, and then at the end we're going to talk about next steps. You guys also asked for online resources. So I've tried to build a number of different tools into this presentation for us to explore today. And you also asked for interactivity, so be ready to work. All right, there, my slides, there it goes, okay. So just to set up some norms, and norms are different than rules, right? Rules are, like, if I have classroom rules, they're really rules for me as a teacher. So respect everyone is a reminder to me to respect everyone. Norms are more related to learning. So when we learn, we start to adopt the behaviors of experts in the field. Those are the norms that we want to adopt. So when you are teaching engineers, you want them to adopt the behaviors that are expected of professional engineers. This becomes known as building a community of practice. Norms are open to negotiation. And it's really important because when norms are public and clear, they help provide transparency in decision making. So when I work with people, I like to think about norms as kind of a challenge solution approach. And in a second, the slide should update. I might be frozen. I have very poor internet. So
we can hear you. There are no issues. We can hear you, and we can also see your screen. No issues at all.
That was my worry. Is it looked? I think I'm frozen. Okay, I think I'm back now. I have very poor internet where I live, so I apologize in advance if there's anything that seems to take a long time to load, or if I disappear at any given point. All right, so when I think about norms with people, working with groups of people, I like to think of a challenge solution approach. So we have challenges, right? One is that everybody on the call has important ideas and perspectives. Right now we have 12 people on this call. There are almost 80 people registered, so we may be getting more people soon. It's a lot of people on the call, so it's helpful if you speak respectfully. Push yourself to wrestle with hard ideas, because sometimes learning can be uncomfortable. One problem with online learning is that there's a lot of distractions, so it's helpful for the group if you're present to whatever extent you can be, knowing that that's going to be dependent on your specific situation. Background noise can be distracting, so go ahead and mute yourself until you are ready to speak. The other thing is that we have only 1 hour today. Please feel free to use the chat box to make any comments. And I'm going to ask you right now to use the chat box. If these norms are things that you feel are appropriate, go ahead and just give me a yes in the chat box. If there's anything you're concerned about, then go ahead and put no in the chat box. All right, anybody else? In that case, this is kind of where we're gonna operate from today. If we need to negotiate again, we will. We'll come back and check again. So the first thing I want us to think about is, what is virtual learning? I'd like for you to go to, oops, sorry about that. Why is it? There we go. I'd like for you to go to this website, and I'll put it in the chat box as well. And this is the first tool.
Kristin, I think we're not able to hear you.
Yes, I can hear you now. So this is a tool called Miro. It is, right now it's free for educators. There's always a free account. I am going to go ahead and just put the annotation tools up so you can actually just go ahead and draw straight on the screen. If it will let me do that, yes. So you should be able to draw straight on the screen if you don't have an account already, or you can go ahead and make an account. But what this is a virtual learning activity. So for example, in a classroom, you might ask students to say, well, what does virtual learning mean? And have them brainstorm ideas. If you are in a remote situation, you can still have students brainstorm ideas. If you want students to be able to collaborate, then collaborative tools like Miro are one way to do that. So go ahead and sign in if you haven't already, and we'll take a look at this tool. So that's up to you. If you want to create just a basic account, you can do that. If you are a student, you can choose your role as student. If you're a professor, you can choose a role as professor. You can just edit to whatever you feel like sharing with them. And so now you should see that you will be able to click on the screen and you should be able to type ideas in here. Go ahead and type an idea. Go ahead and type. When you think of virtual learning, what do you think of? And so this becomes one way that teams can collaborate. So I see virtual learning is a learning experience that's enhanced through utilizing computers and or the internet, learning online. These are all pretty common responses when you ask somebody, what is virtual learning? I'm going to give you another minute to just kind of play with the tools, and then we'll move on to the next part of this. If you notice, there's a toolbar on the side. You can add text, you can add sticky notes, shapes.
To all the participants, we have posted links on the chat box. You can click on those links and then you can actually go and work on the Miro board as well. Like very similar to how Saravanan is working, like others can also work as well. There are links on the chat box which you can use to click and go inside.
All right, I'm going to take us back from this app back to where we were with the presentation, and then we'll talk a little bit more about this app kind of in general, but more specifically why we just did this activity. So let me go back to no, that's the wrong one. All right, so one thing about learning that we've noted that research has shown is that people actually learn more when they're forced to think about what they already know. I mean, not really forced, but encouraged. When they have a chance to think about what they know before they're asked to do a task. So in this case, I asked you to think about virtual learning. We're going to come back to this at the end, but this was a chance for you to start thinking about what you already know and a chance for me to see what questions you have and kind of where your thoughts are with this. So as we work, I can refer back to them as the instructor, and you also as the learner can kind of refer back as well. So I have 4 terms here: learning, teaching, education, and school. I am going to ask you just to find the term that is most interesting to you and click on it. This is my fake breakout room right now.
Krista, can you show the options again? There are 4 links.
Yes. All right. So learning, teaching, education, and school. I want you to click on the one that kind of speaks to you the most.
Okay.
And you're just going to, this is going to take you to a tool called bubble.us, which is it's another kind of mind mapping tool. So it's just a different one to play with. It's a little different outlook. But I'd like you to think about, how would you define the term that you selected? So for this tool, you can click the little green arrow to add new ideas, or you can click on the main thing to edit as well. So I see we've got quaint, interesting.
Wow, this is interesting. I think we have to double click on the screen, right?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
We have to double click on the screen to add a new, add a new box. Exactly, right?
You can double click, or you can click down here at the bottom, the little green bubble.
Okay. Oh, got it.
You can also even click on the one that's already there and add to it if you want.
Got it. Very interesting. I mean, participants, if you have any questions, please feel free to unmute and ask as well. We have a very small group and we want to make it really interesting for you.
I'm going to give you about another 30 seconds to kind of add to whichever of the 4 terms you picked. And then we'll look at them.
Participants, if you face any challenges, please feel free to type them down on the chat box, or also unmute yourself and please feel free to ask.
All right, so let's take a look at what we have. So connected to the idea of learning, we have school, college, making, this is making at one point, and then online learning. Teaching, we have got nothing. Education, attaining wisdom, all around development. I'm not sure what, I think those were still being worked on. And then school, again, is kind of blank. One of the things about these 4 terms is that they're often used interchangeably. You'll hear people talk about learning versus teaching versus education versus school, but they end up kind of putting them all together in the same pot. In our work today, we're going to be focusing on learning and teaching kind of coupled together. So how teaching and learning interact, and how we can use tools online, we can use technology tools to help that, including how we can get away from too much technology. So I know that you guys have been seeing the news about the United States. These are not new problems. They've existed as long as our country has existed. We have, in the United States, we have definitely a highly segregated society, even though it's no longer legal. The graph right here shows 20 years of data from national testing. These are 17-year-olds in mathematics, and you can see that in 20 years, there's been very little change between how white kids versus how African American kids score on national math tests. So despite all the work that's happened, clearly there's still work to be done, particularly in the realm of education. In the early 90s, a researcher named Haberman studied urban education and came up with this idea of what he called the pedagogy of poverty. And so when we think about the pedagogy of poverty, there are 4 tenets that go with it. The first is that learning is what teachers do. Teaching is what teachers do, and learning is what learners do. So they are, according to the pedagogy of poverty, they are separate. Teachers, in this case, don't have responsibility for the students' learning, and students just sit there while teachers teach. Behavior is a control, so teachers are in charge, they're responsible. Students have to sit and follow directions, and that's going to help them learn appropriate behavior. This is rules versus norms right here, right? Teachers' directions are whatever the teacher says they want them to be, but students may or may not be learning how to actually behave like professional engineers in that case. The third major tenet in the pedagogy of poverty is that students are going to be ranked no matter what. There will always be some who rise above, others will finish at the bottom. It's just natural. And therefore, there's nothing you can do about it. And then the last tenet is that you must directly teach what you want students to learn. They have to be compelled to learn it. And then these tenets came after Haberman observed a set of behaviors. And if you look at these behaviors, none of them relate to learning. They relate to tangible things that students or teachers do, but the goal is left out of them. So there's not a question about how students learn in this situation. It's just, what do teachers do, and that counts as teaching. What we want to do with education is we want to rethink this. This is really important because, especially in our country, right, the more things change, the more things stay the same. We're at a change with the pandemic and the increase in virtual learning. We have an option now to maybe rethink what kind of learning we want students to be able to do. So the last thing we want to do, and I think this goes back to the question about how do we get away from technology that was in the chat box. The last thing we want to do is use technology as a worksheet. Because then all we're doing is linking teaching and learning, and we're focusing on compliance. We're not really focusing on the kinds of creative, rigorous learning that students can engage in when we open it up a little bit more and think about how we can use technology to liberate students instead of just give them a distance learning worksheet. COVID-19 certainly has provided novel challenges as we're thinking about how we want to proceed. You know, we have to be socially distant, 2 meters apart. We in the United States, we're having food shortages. The map this map is of North Carolina. The darker the color, the fewer households have internet access. So the more households without access to the internet, the darker it is. This is my state. My house is like right down here on the corner. So we can't just assume that, even more than we never really assume, but for years teachers assumed that pretty much all their students had similar kinds of things going on at home. And now we really can't. We don't know, at least in the United States, we don't know if people don't have access to food anymore. We discovered that many people no longer have access to food. Food banks are quadrupling the number of people they serve. We can't assume that everybody can get on the internet and that we can have class online in real time. That happened to my daughter taking classes at a 2-year college. She's a high schooler, but she takes classes at a 2-year college, and she couldn't connect to the internet, and her teacher kept marking her down. There's nothing a 16-year-old can do if the internet doesn't work. It's out of her control. So we have to rethink what the purpose of our learning is in this kind of a environment. And so what I want you to do, we've got another tool that we're going to just play with quickly, just so you can see some different tools. But I want you to think, in your own experience, and I know that your country is just emerging from lockdown, as we are here in the United States. So what challenges have you encountered, or what challenges do you anticipate for the next semester with this virtual learning environment? And the link is in the chat as well.
What is that we should add in tag, Kristin?
I'm sorry?
There's a question called tag. What is that information we should add? Tag. TAG tag.
So this is so I put the link in the chat as well, but I want you to think about challenges you've encountered, challenges you anticipate. The info you can add for tag is however you wish to tag it is fine. Right now, this is just a brainstorming idea. You can use it certainly more sophisticated. You can see that there are options to add film, pictures, connect documents. You can tag things as how to or priority. You can change the color. So you can see if it's tagged, it shows up as priority down there.
Salai Anderson was not able to load the this thing. I'm also sending the link. Salai Anderson, just try with the link if you can actually click and load it.
Yeah, sir, I tried it, but it is loading so much time.
Okay. So if it's loading very slowly, then let's use the chat box. If you can't get into the Lino app, go ahead and use the chat box and put your ideas about challenges you've encountered or challenges you anticipate in the chat box. Oh, okay, good. And I see in the chat box, access to affordable technology, high-speed internet, smart devices, etc. Those are the same kinds of challenges we're having here in the United States, even in my home state of North Carolina. So what we have to think about is if devices are a challenge to get, when we switch to a virtual learning environment, we have to be really careful about expecting everyone to have access. And so we want to think about how we can use technology in ways that enhance learning as opposed to replace learning. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and look at 3 cases. Each case represents kind of a slightly different take on how technology might be deployed in a distance learning environment. And in each one, we're going to think about how we do this together. And this was a teacher I was speaking with this week, Beth Coleman, who was talking about one of the challenges. She works with preschool kids, very young children. And so she was talking about one of the challenges that she faces is how do we collectively rethink virtual learning? And how do we do so in a way that replicates the kind of learning we want for our students? So what are our values? And how do our choices about the virtual learning environments we select amplify or detract from those values? And then what are constraints we have to address? So certainly access to technology, access to internet, access to smart devices. Those are major constraints to address. There are 3 cases we're going to look at today that I have had the opportunity to work on. The first one, we're going to be looking at what's called universal design for learning. And we're going to be looking at my advisor's research project called Making Science Visible. The second is maker-based education. And so this is this was work that I did when I was in the classroom. And then the last is looking at citizen science and place-based education. So case one, we have a challenge, right? Whenever we think about learning, we have to think about our challenges and constraints. What is the purpose of our learning? In the United States, students who are learning English achieve far lower on national exams than children who speak English already. And then when they get to middle school, which is kids in like the kids who are like 11, 12, 13, 14 years old, it becomes really hard because suddenly they have to learn about things that they can't see, like chemical reactions. So they can see the results of the chemical reactions, but they can't actually see like the molecules changing and reforming. So as part of this project, my advisor had the following design principles, and these are what guide the project. One is to partner with teachers and develop and design interactive visualization. So not just saying, here, you're going to use, here's this, use it. It's actually, what do you need? How will this work for your classroom? The visualizations are built around problem-solving scenarios. The goal is to engage students in science practices, so we simulate actual experiments. We provide multimodal support, so these are for English learners, so there's lots of visuals. There are videos embedded, sound embedded, language supports embedded, and they're designed to encourage conversation between students. So I'm going to show you two, and then I'm going to let you play with the third. So the first one that we're going to look at today, if I can get to it, is properties of matter. And so, there it goes. So students are introduced to a problem where there's ice in a jar, it melts, and then it evaporates, and they have to show what happens at each stage, the molecular arrangements. So there are stamps that students can use to put on what they believe is happening. One thing we found is that students, almost all students have this feeling that when things become a gas, it changes from water into like carbon or oxygen. Even though they know that the molecules are water molecules in the liquid form and the solid form, somehow they feel like the atoms change. So they can get feedback, they can get hints, and they can also get request automated feedback, which will give them some ideas about conservation. They have like a limited amount of feedback, so they can't just click feedback all the time. There's icons to remind them to talk to their classmates. And like I said, the feedback sometimes is words, sometimes it's actually like videos here. Get this one to start. And so this is one example of universal design, because even though the supports, the visual supports are designed for English language learners, what we found was that all students, including non-ELLs, have this problem with the gas. This is one of the tools that's being designed for the my advisor's tools. I'm going to show you another one, and then I'm going to let you guys play with the third one. They will all be available soon. Only one is online right now, though, which is why I can't take you guys to it. This one's a little bit farther along. You can see there's a scenario about we need to grow enough cabbages to feed these people in the community. There's a place where they can check feedback. There's a video that shows them how to use the tool. It's locked at different levels, so it's not overwhelming. They can drag and drop arrows to show their ideas. and then they get feedback as they go. So they either get automated feedback or they can ask for specific feedback, and it will use an algorithm to give them feedback. What I'm gonna do right now is let you guys play with the third one. This is the one that's live at the moment. So if you go to the link right here, it will take you to Dr. Ru's website, and you can see how this simulation works. So you can see this kind of the feedback and things like that students get.
I actually have to copy paste the link over here on the chat box because
yes, I will be happy to.
Thank you.
Thank you. So this is a simulated experiment that was developed and tested with students. Like I said, this is the one that's live at the moment. The others should be live soon. But what I want you to think about, digital immigrant catering to the needs and interests of digital natives. Yeah, I want you to think about how we, this is kind of traditional virtual learning right here, right? Like it's all online, but I want you to think about how we built in supports to make it easier for more kids to use this tool.
Kristin, I'm not sure. The link is not loading. The link that you actually shared with us.
It's not working.
Yeah.
Well, here, I'll put it.
Is it same for everyone? Okay.
So the new one should be the same link, but see if it works for you.
All right. Yeah, it works.
Okay, great. Thank you for letting me know. Because it.
It's very interesting, actually, this tool.
So in this case, technology is, we're deploying technology to do something you can't do in the real world, right? You cannot in the real world open up a plant and see molecular interactions during photosynthesis. And I'll just run one. And so then it pops up with this, and they can get automated feedback on this as well. So take another 30 seconds maybe to play with this, and then we're going to move on because it's 10:22 and we still have 2 cases to look at.
This is pretty interesting, actually. I'm sure the students will love it.
Yeah, so this is my advisor's research. If you are at a university, you can read her work, some of the work that we've done together as well. and see what we've learned about how we can help English learners
Amazing. That's
through
amazing.
technology. So I want you to think about the underlying assumptions that you might have noticed about teaching and learning. And what we're going to do is I'm not putting a link up yet. I'm going to go to a tool called Kahoot, and we're going to look at this tool using 3 different ways. Come on. So this is kind of the back end. I'm going to start it in a second, and it's going to give you like a number code. It's an assessment tool usually, but it can be used for formative assessment. So rather than like giving people grades, it gives you a sense of where they are in their thinking right now. It gets used kindergarten through higher ed. So I'm going to use classic mode. And you can go ahead and log in. This can be done on a phone. This can be done on any device that has access to the internet. So if you're working with college students who are spread out across the country and they have like a smartphone, they can do that. They can use this tool. Only 2 players? Come on, guys.
Participants, please click on the link on the chat box. That's also a passcode, which is something that you have to enter after going to kahoot.in, and then you will be able to log in. If you have any questions, please feel free to unmute and ask if there's any difficulty.
All right, we'll go ahead and start.
Okay.
So this is one way you can use it with this first question here. So thinking about the assumptions as part of the Making Science Visible project, go ahead and click all the ones you think. So here, the assumption that process is more important than content. Actually, for the Making Science Visible, process is important, but content is equally important because you get the feedback. But these other things are also part of the assumption. So feedback is helpful. We didn't get a chance to spend too much time with it. Talk is important, and students can do challenging work. We're going to go look at the second case, and then we'll come back and we'll look at a different way you can use this app. So the second case is about Eagle Robotics. This is a program I started when I was in the classroom, and it was an engineering program. We wanted to partner with the community and provide students with role models because the students I taught didn't see themselves even graduating high school. So we developed this program where they came together for free robot camps that we hosted with the IEEE and some other local organizations. And from there, it blossomed into them working like street fairs, maker festivals, robotics festivals at the museum, where they could really be leaders, not just not just students. Yes, Kahoot can absolutely be used as classes. Absolutely. Edmodo is very friendly. I've used that as well. If you have an account for Edmodo, it's a little like Facebook. It depends it's basically a learning management system, but it's got kind of a Facebook interface. So if we go back to Kahoot, I'm going to give you guys your next question. And this is the poll. So the first one ranked everybody right or wrong, and this is a different way to think about it. So there was agreement on this one. So yeah, so these were all important design considerations. That is the one that you guys felt was most important. And so in that case, for example, the learning wasn't about the technology. The technology was used kind of as a tool to convince students to play along. The last one is on citizen science and then Ant Picnic. So this is citizen science is an attempt to use internet technology and other tools to collect data, but the work can be done offline and then shared back. So these are second graders working on a prototype for a project that became what's called Ant Picnic. Which is developed by Dr. Magdalena Sorger. It's run around the world. Most of the work is done offline. There is also the opportunity for students to look at real data from around the world. So if you are working with people and you want them to deal with data, then citizen science is a great way to do that. We are just about out of time. So I want to wrap this up with just giving you a minute to kind of talk about the major takeaways about learning from these three cases. So in the chat box will be low tech. What's a takeaway you have about learning?
I think if anyone wants to unmute and share, that's also fine.
And then I just want you to, as we leave, I want you to think about how you can use technology to power learning and empower students. So how can, rather than using technology for technology's sake, how can you do this to support your goals, your values, and the values and goals of your students as well? These are some links that may be useful to you, and I'll leave this up, and I'll also put my contact information on it as well.
Can I take your email ID? All right, I'm typing it out the chat box.
Thank you. I'm also on Twitter at KD Bedell, which makes it easy.
Awesome. Okay. KD Bedell, right? Okay.
Yep.
That's wonderful. Okay, Kristin,
So
I'll actually do a closing.
Arvindhan, sir.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Arvindhan, sir.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Yes, Abhishek.
Arvindhan, sir.
Yes, Abhishek, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah, excuse me.
Yeah, go ahead.
So can I ask the question, or we will get the time for the question, especially time for the questioning?
Yeah, you can ask questions. The presentation is over.
Yes.
Yes. What questions can I help you with?
Okay, madam. Very good evening.
Good morning. Good evening.
Yeah. Actually, I am from India. That's why. Good evening. Okay. Anyway, good evening or good morning. But the main question from my side, madam. Actually, I have posted in the chat box also. Or we
Hello?
can relate rote learning and online learning, especially by using less technology. How can we get more and more learning outcome from the students? Once again, I'm repeating my question. Means
no, that's a great
nowadays
question.
we are moving through online learning, virtual learning, but it is essential to relate it to rote learning also, because we are comfortable in rote learning, or you can say we are in the comfort zone. So how can we use less how can we use less technology to get more and more learning outcome for the student as well as for us also? This is the question, madam.
I think it's a really great question, and it speaks to the idea that technology is a challenge, right? Access to it. So what I would say is go think about your goals for what it is you want students to learn and do. What norms do you want them to take up as professional engineers or whatever subject you're teaching? Use technology. Physics. Okay. So well, what do you want them to take up as physicists? So in that case, technology is helpful for helping students understand things that are really abstract. Even college students struggle with physics, with molecular interactions, with atoms, with force and motion. So in that case, you would use the technology to help them see what they can't. But most of the learning that they do isn't going to be from the technology. It's going to be how you ask them to use and think about the technology. So if there are things that can be done offline, then have them do those things offline. Use the technology, like some of the tools we looked at today, which are collaborative tools, for them to work together, challenge one another's assumptions, share out their ideas, which can be done synchronously or asynchronously. But the goal of the point of the learning is, the point of technology is that it's a support to learning. It's not a replacement to learning. So if you're using, for example, are you familiar with PhET?
Yeah, PhET, PhET.
Yeah.
I have used. So Ohm's law for the simulation, I'm using.
So the PhET visualizations are great, but students need like guiding questions to help them make sense of them, right? Otherwise, they can spend forever playing with the visualization and not know what they're supposed to be paying attention to. So that and the visualizations my advisor built, we use that automated feedback as a way to do that. If you don't have that access, then you as a teacher can create that feedback and say, I want you to try, I want you to try this, and I want you to stop at this point in the visualization, and I want you to see which of these statements seems to be the most accurate. Kahoot also has the option of using video, so you can embed video as well.
Okay. Madam, what is the most user friendly app for the virtual learning right now, present scenario? Most user friendly.
What's as for user friendly? That's going to depend again on your goal.
Yeah.
There are many different learning management systems out there. There's Edmodo, which I saw in the chat, which is fairly user friendly and easy to use. There's Sakai, Moodle, Canvas, Blackboard. There's lots of different learning systems. What's going to be most user friendly is going to be the one that gets your goals, that puts your goals foremost for your students. You may have to play with some different ones. I tried to show you 3 different mind mapping ones today to find the one that works for you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Very good answer. Very good. Means you are very supporting.
I try. Glad I can.
And madam, one request from my side, please.
Hello?
Can discuss through with you through mail also. You can give your mail ID in chat box so that we can discuss in future.
My email is on. Yeah, my email's in the chat box.
Yeah.
Yes. Abhishek posted it. Thank you so much for your questions as well.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Kristin, for answering them. On that note, I want to actually talk about a bit more about the upcoming hands-on workshops that we are planning to do. We are planning to do these 4 workshops in the upcoming week. So these are going to be 2 hour hands-on workshops. I think if you want to know more about virtual education, this can be helpful. You can find all the related information about these workshops and everything on this specific link, bit.ly/EduRise June. So in this whole month, we're going to actually know more about virtual education and interact with a lot more people. Thank you so much, Kristin, for taking your time and actually being a part of this webinar. It was so wonderful having you here. And I think Kristin for me is a really supportive person. I've always used to tell to everyone. She was the one who motivated me when I was actually applying for IEEE awards, anything related to education. She's the go-to person for me. Thank you so much, Kristin, for taking your time to be a part of this webinar. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. I'm grateful that I could be of help for you, and congratulations on your EduRise company, on your project, your startup.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
Thank you both of you. Thank you both of you.
Thank you, Abhishek. Before you wind up, can we actually get a group picture? Can everyone actually switch on your videos? Like everyone on the call, can you all switch on your videos for a second? And then we'll get a group picture with Kristin. Yeah. Can we see everyone? Abhishek always has videos going on. Thank you, Abhishek.
Yes.
Thank you, Abdul. Can we see others as well? Can we see Gomati, Luke Karishma, Kalayarasan, Pavitra, Raja, Aravind, Saravanan, Smita? Can you all quickly switch on your videos? Okay, I'm going to give you 30 seconds. All right. Okay. I'm going to click the photo 3, 2, 1.
Clicked.
Yes, done. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. One question. Yes. For you. First of all, means we will get the certificate of this webinar according to you. You have said already. Second question. It was very good experience. Means in very short time, she has given a lot of the information. Means you have organized a very good session. So congratulations to you.
Thanks a lot. Thank you so much.
Yes. And third thing, please tell me or please update me for the next webinar or next function means workshop or something which you will organize.
That would be our pleasure. Yeah.
Yeah, and please send your email. I have your email. I have your mail ID. No problem.
Perfect.
So thank you very much once again. Kudos to you. Very good job. Wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Arvind.
Sorry, is someone saying something?
Thank you so much for this wonderful section.
Thank you, Saravanan. Okay, bye. Bye, Kristin.
Bye, Arvind. Bye bye.
Bye bye.